The Skeptic Zone is brought to you by Dr. Bob's Trivia Quiz. Visit drbobsquiz.wordpress.com and see if you can match wits with Dr. Bob.
Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, number 317 for the 16th of November, 2014, or 2014, or that year that came after last. Maynard here, filling in for Richard Saunders, who's out of action. But he's not out of action, if you know what I mean. Anyway, he's out of the other action for this week, and he cannot speak. Yes, Richard Saunders, the throat that dare not speak its name. Can I say that? Poor Richard. Anyway, send your condolences, care of this podcast to Richard, and he'll be back on deck before you know it. But the deck is the deck of the SS Lollipop, but he'll still be there. As a result of this week's show, the part of Richard Saunders will be played by Maynard wearing no pants, which is a good thing it's an audio podcast, and there's no cover art. Yes, but we've got lots and lots and lots of skeptical goodness. Speaking of skeptical goodness, you can catch me on the Splitting Cases podcast, in which I solve that age-old skeptical question, which is the better movie? Can't Stop the Music or Spice World? Well, okay, the answer isn't exactly a skeptical one, but it is, as the religious amongst you would believe, a revealed truth. Anyway, that's the Splitting Cases podcast, but we've got none of that nonsense here today. We've got some other nonsense. At the top of the show, we have an interview with Dr. Julie Lada, the skeptical vet. Now, this was done before Richard's voice went south, which means he was still at the top part of New South Wales at the time, and Dr. Julie will set us on some of the wacky woo she's had to deal with as a vet, because believe you me, the wacky woo world is not just confined to those of us with a monkey-evolved brain. I'm sorry, that should be a primate-evolved brain. I thought you got me there, but no, I read a book once. Then it's This Week in Science from RiAus. Man, they've been working hard in South Australia. They've decriminalised pot, then they recriminalised it, and I don't know what's going on, but it has a lot to do with the output of RiAus. It's all happening out of Adelaide. It's not just the city of weird murders anymore. And to round off the show, it's Evidence, Please. That's pronounced Evidence, Please, with Jo Alabaster. Now, this week, she's looking at the reaction that homeopathy got when it claimed it could treat Ebola. Let's just say it was not overwhelmingly good. That's probably the best way to put it. I like the guy who flew from Vermont to say he could cure Ebola using time travel and quantum, and claimed that he was a doctor. Well, obviously that's just stupid, because if he's making that claim, he would be the doctor. See, topical and humorous. Now, if you'd like to meet Richard Saunders, Jo Alabaster, I'll be hiding in a cupboard, and other things at the big Australian Skeptics National Convention, and we won't tell you which cupboard. And it's not a closet. It's slightly smaller. That's the 28th to 30th of November in Chatswood. Now, it's just going to be happening there. Basically, let's just honestly tell you, if you aren't going to this event, you have to have a good look at what you're doing in your life and either put a big tick next to it or not. It's just make or break time. Like when I'm going to be talking to George Harab. But if you'd like to meet everybody, get going and get to that website. Everyone's going to be there. You're going to hear stories about it. I'm going to do over 2,600 interviews so that there will after this convention, there won't be a Skeptic Zone. It'll just be the National Convention Skeptic Zone show for the next 3 years. It's all happening at the Skeptics National Convention, 28th to 30th of November in Chatswood. Who knows? I might even interview you, and you better have an answer prepared, and it doesn't even have to be to one of my questions. So I could just say, "How are you today?" And you could say, "Bundaberg," and then I'll just have to guess. See, that just throws it completely back on the interviewer. It's an old ABC tactic. Just have a question ready for whatever they ask you first. I mean, the Prime Minister goes on there and they go, "How are you tonight?" And he goes, "I'm not so sure about that. Who told you?" See, and that just gets you out of the trouble straight away. And like I said, get that ready. And for more information about the National Skeptics Conference, please go, for the love of whatever you believe in other than God. Hang on, I read a book once. No, that's not right. For the love of not believing in any deity at all, you go to convention.skeptics.com.au. And I would actually like to talk to any skeptics who are there who are Christians, who are believers, because I've got to say I haven't met many in the skeptics movement, and I'm interested in hearing why you believe what you believe and how that works for you, and I'd like to know that, and I think we might all like to do that. That's just an offer out there, and remember, have that answer ready. Bundaberg could be one of them, but since I've already used that answer, you'll have to find your own. Well, now it's time for me to go into the next room, look under the bed, and find out what the Penthouse Pet of the Month in 1980 won as a car. I can't reveal that answer. You'll have to look that one up on the internet. What did she win as a car? And when you see the answer, you really have to wonder if the whole thing was worth it. But while I'm doing that, I hope I can find everything under the bed there. Enjoy the Skeptic Zone.
And joining me now from a beautiful place in the world, I've been told it's beautiful. I'd like to visit there. I'd like to visit everywhere. Whenever I interview people, I always like to go and visit them, even if I've never been there before. From what I imagine to be beautiful Indianapolis in Indiana, it's Dr. Julie Lada, the skeptical vet. Hello, Julie.
Hey, Richard.
It's been a little while since we've caught up with you. In fact, August last year was the last time you were on the Skeptic Zone. And for those people who may not remember, you spent a long time, I guess, at the island or on the island of St. Kitts to become a vet. And I bet you still miss that.
Oh, I do. I miss the island so much. Got in my blood in a big bad way.
So how are you coping in the real world?
Work keeps me pretty busy, but I'm going on a Caribbean cruise in February, so I guess I couldn't stay away for too very long.
You're going back to St. Kitts?
Not to St. Kitts, no, but definitely back to island living for a week at least.
Well, I'm sure it'll seem very familiar to you.
Yeah, I'm probably never going to leave the ocean for the most part of it.
Well, maybe you should specialize and become a marine vet. Is there such a thing?
Oh, yeah. Actually, one of my classmates took a job in Florida, and he's working primarily with aquatic mammals, dolphins, and things like that.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
I could just picture you doing that because I have a picture of you in a wetsuit underwater with the whole scuba gear on.
Yeah, that's when I was getting dive certified down there.
I can tell you've got quite an affinity for animals just by the way you chat about them, marine animals and all. But what I was hoping to talk to you today about being a vet, and you've been a for real vet now for a while, dealing with animals on a daily basis, all sorts of animals, large and small. We have in what's been referred to as far as people go, is the Dr. Google syndrome, where people will Google their illnesses. They'll see a rash on themselves or feel a bump or something, run to Google, come up with all sorts of crazy diagnoses. But I understand this also happens to vets.
Yeah. It's kind of like a mixed blessing because we love owners who are invested and involved in their pet's care and do their homework. It's fantastic if I say, okay, well, your pet is hypothyroid or has diabetes, and at their next follow-up visit, they're like, yeah, well, I've been reading on the internet about this treatment and that treatment, and I know the things to look out for that might, signal that they're getting worse. So I love it when I get the owners who put in the time and the effort. That's fantastic. What I'm less in love with is the owners who show up and they're like, oh, my dog's, gaining weight even though we cut their food back and we've been exercising more. So they're hypothyroid, so just give me the thyroid medication.
Really? So they walk in already having diagnosed the animal themselves and they know what medicine they want you to prescribe.
Yeah, they tell me, I want thyroxine, or my dog's been shaking its head a lot, it's got an ear infection, put some medicine in it. And it's kind of like selling, I don't want to say selling, how do I want to say this? Getting owners to comply with a treatment plan that I've put together where, we need to test their T4 then and see if it's low, or I need to run an ear swab and look at it under a microscope. They they've already made up their minds. It's an ear infection. Just put medicine in it. Why can't you just give me medicine?
Wow.
And then I kind of go into my whole explanation of, well, it could be bacteria, it could be yeast. Of the kinds of bacteria it could be, there are different antibiotics that work better or worse. So I really need the ear swab in order to give you the right medicine. And that is definitely one of the struggles of being a veterinarian is, you hear all these jokes of, I became a vet because I don't like people. And
and I haven't heard that one before.
Huge part of what we do. And especially explaining, why I want certain things and why I need certain diagnostics. It's a major part of what I do. And Dr. Google doesn't make it easy sometimes.
No, I can imagine so, because this is a problem, well, it can be a problem faced by GPs. I don't know, maybe not so much specialists. Maybe by the time people get to that stage, it's not such a problem. But certainly we've heard about it with GPs, like, as I said before, people marching in and saying, I've got this condition or I've got that condition and I want you to do this or that for it. So, although I shouldn't be surprised, it happens to vets. I am surprised because it never crossed my mind before. Do you find this a regular occurrence?
Yeah, definitely. And it very much ranges from the people who are like, oh, I just read about it, and so I thought that, maybe we would be able to get the medicine without doing the swab. But now that you've explained it, I understand why it's important that we do. And then you get the other end who just, their minds are made up and they think that I've been accused of stealing, of overselling products or services, of ripping people off, and it hurts. I'm not trying to rip you off. I'm trying to do the best thing for your pet. And it sucks when you get accused of being self-interested or out for money when that's not your goal.
So you've literally had people come in and say, this is what's wrong with my pet, I need this medicine. And you said, now hang on a minute, I've got to run some tests. And they'll argue the point with you.
More than argue the point, they'll outright accuse me of malpractice and trying to sell them things that they don't need.
Wow.
It's, I don't want to portray this as if it's the usual, but it's definitely something that any veterinarian will tell you they deal with.
Wow, the internet age, huh? It brings all sorts of interesting things to people. But arguments in the veterinarian clinic, that I didn't foresee, I must admit. And what do you see most of in your practice? Is it simply what we might call the traditional cats and dogs and mice and I don't know what else?
Yeah, it's mostly a cat and dog practice. Since I came in, I'm at a practice with 4 doctors now that I've joined. There were 3 before. None of the 3 were terribly comfortable with doing any exotic animal medicine. Exotics meaning the pocket pets, reptiles, amphibians, birds, gerbils, hamsters, that kind of thing. So those are more my thing, and I'm definitely very interested in exotic animal medicine. So I've been seeing a lot more of those kind of patients, and then we're kind of running into, well, I need this. And so I'm bringing more diagnostic tools into the clinic too. So it's a growing part of our practice.
The exotic pet market, isn't that interesting? And what I mean, you say, reptiles and things? You must have seen a few very strange exotic pets. Oh, yeah.
Well, not so much at my current practice, but in clinics, I saw porcupines. I saw a Patagonian cavy, which is, I think, the 2nd or 3rd largest rodent in the world. They basically look like a on stilts, and enormous reptiles and birds, giant parrots, tons of cool stuff.
Do you see many snakes?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. I've seen a couple since I've been in private practice. I saw a lot when I was going through my clinical year of school, but less so. I do see a lot of pocket pets and reptiles and things from PetSmart. It's a pet store that they have live animals, and I've been referred a lot of their pets from all around Indianapolis. Actually, I've had as far as Avon, which is about 13 miles away from my clinic. They've driven to come see me. So it's wonderful. It's fantastic to, have word of mouth spreading that I have competence with exotics, but it's kind of terrifying for being only 4 months out of school to have her, she's the exotic expert, go see her. And then I get something like, I have no idea what this is.
Now, when we were chatting to you even earlier, some years ago when you were still in the middle of your studies, how does the reality of what you have to face in a practice relate to or compare to what you thought it would be like during your years on St. Kitts?
Well, I was a technician before I went to vet school, so I had a pretty realistic view of what clinical practice would be like. There are definitely those of my classmates who had less technical experience before starting school, and I'm sure it was a bit of a rude awakening, especially you can imagine people are very attached to their pets, and the emotions can run high when you're
absolutely, without question. And from experience, last year little cat Adele died, and you were very helpful in that situation. But emotions run very high. Yeah, we still have Fred. He's kicking around here somewhere. But
good to hear it. But yeah, when the financial versus the attachment kind of dilemma happens is when we definitely see some very high emotional states from our owners, because it's very difficult. Sometimes they feel like they're being heartless or selfish or negligent, even if they just don't have the finances there to manage a very critically ill pet. And so we have some very serious talks about, it's okay.
Wow.
We just have these limitations. We know that we have X amount of dollars to work with. And if the patient is in pain or end of life issues, terminal cancer, that kind of thing, then we sit down and have this talk of, you're not a bad person, you're not a bad owner, this is what you can do. And if what the pet requires goes beyond those financial means, then you can end things humanely, and that's not a bad or a selfish choice. So I have very serious, very difficult conversations pretty much on a daily basis with owners. And a lot of times that's all they need is that reassurance that they're not a bad person, and it's okay if you've got $50 in your wallet and you can't afford to do 3 days of hospitalization and IV fluids and pain meds, and you just can't. It's okay. We understand. We're not going to be like, well, sorry about your luck, out the door.
That's really interesting to hear that from you, because just referring back to what a GP might deal with, and I guess specialists too, and we hear about how important the bedside manner is for doctors to have a good rapport with their patients, to put them at ease, to be understanding. I don't know what you'd call it with a vet, though. It's not quite a bedside manner you might have there.
You still use the same terminology, even though you're technically correct. Yeah, it's more like kennel side manner. I don't know.
It's a kennel side manner. Maybe we should rename it. That's right. That's again, it's something I guess wouldn't cross a lot of people's minds, but being in your situation, you'd certainly have to deal with that, and a great deal more than your average GP, I would think.
Yeah, the average GP doesn't really discuss euthanasia with his patients.
Not really. Not really. If we can get a slight giggle out of that, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And just to wrap things up, and I'd probably asked you this before, but do you and I'm sure I've asked you this before, but what sort of magical thinking does a vet encounter from owners, woo-woo and things like that?
Oh, all kinds of things. I have owners who treat their cats' fleas holistically with herbs and such, and don't believe in heartworm medication or chemicals or drugs. Probably the latest one that I see a lot of is people who are on these grain-free diets who are convinced that grains are the root of all evil in dog and cat health issues. And I've had so many itchy, because for some reason allergies, even food allergies in pets, manifest as dermatologic, and they become very itchy and will tear themselves open, like biting and scratching.
Oh,
We'll get these itchy dogs in, and the owner is like, I don't understand how she's still allergic. She's on a grain-free diet. So yeah, that's probably the gold star right now in the woo-tastic thinking of what I see on a daily basis.
Have you had people come in saying that I've been treating my dog with homeopathy or my cat with homeopathy?
Yeah, I actually recently just had a fully paralyzed in the hind end dog come in, and it has a fairly poor prognosis, as you can imagine. Within 24 hours, if they receive surgery, it can have a better prognosis, but it's just not a really great thing for me to have come in the door and have to talk to two very upset owners who just came home from work and found their dog, unable to use his back legs. And so we kind of talked about, well, if you get to a specialist and you receive the surgery within 24 hours, that's basically your only hope.
Yeah.
And they went to the specialist and they couldn't afford the surgery. So they were treating with chiropractic and acupuncture, the last I heard.
Wow. Acupuncture, now that I can believe, because I've heard about that for pets, actually, acupuncture for dogs and racing horses, I think.
Yeah. Well, chiropractic is huge in racing horses too.
Really?
You can imagine they don't do spinal manipulation manually with their hands. They have to use an air gun to, the spine of a horse. You can imagine trying to crack but
it boggles the mind. An air gun for chiropractic on a horse. You can't make this stuff up, but somebody did, I suppose.
Yeah. So that kind of stuff, it kills me sometimes because I know that patient's not going to get any better. And chiropractic, especially for a spinal injury, I'm just floored by it.
Wow.
Let's take the herniated disc and mash on it a bit. That sounds like a fantastic idea.
It sounds to me like, if I can offer a little bit of advice, you should note these stories along the way. In about 20, 30 years or so, I think it'll make a cracking book, actually. The Adventures of the Skeptical Vet.
Yeah, if I'm still here in 20 or 30 years.
Well, I certainly hope you are, Julie Lada, and I hope for the sake of the animals where you are too. Thank you once again for chatting to us. It's really fun to catch up with you roughly every year and find out where you are in your career and your adventures. So thank you very much once again.
Thank you.
The Skeptic Magazine, the journal from Australian skeptics. Subscribe online to the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. Visit www.skeptics.com.au and click the publications link. You can also find there over 30 years of back issues free to download. The Skeptic, the magazine from Australian skeptics.
Brisbane Skeptic Society is proud to announce that Michael Marshall will be coming to Brisbane on the 1st of December.
I can't wait to speak in Brisbane. I really want to be showing people, taking people through some of the stuff that I've been doing in skepticism, some of the interesting, some of the weird stories, some of the funny stories, and some of the quite horrible things that you see when you get out there and you investigate skepticism stuff, you investigate pseudoscientific stuff firsthand. So please come along to Brisbane. I look forward to seeing everyone there. We can have a beer afterwards too.
Come along to Toombul Shire Hall starting at 6 o'clock for a talk by Michael Marshall and drinks afterwards. For more info, go to brisbaneskeptics.org.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus, bringing you the science you need to know. It was one small step for an animal, one giant leap for the animal kingdom. But just how did the first vertebrates walk onto land and breathe air for the first time? It's time to take a closer look at our first steps. Two recent papers reveal key insights into how the first vertebrates walked onto land and took their first breath. The mechanism that determines whether you have fish fins or walking limbs is the rate at which a couple of Hox genes are expressed. Hox genes are like orchestra conductors. They regulate how a whole suite of other genes perform, and changing its rate of expression can radically alter how an organism develops. We learnt more about limb building when developmental embryologists switched the Hox genes from a fish to a mouse. The fish Hox gene could not produce fingers and toes in mice. Thus, the genetic apparatus required to make fingers and toes must have evolved after walking limbs developed. And we also now know how breathing developed for the first time. And guess what? We almost ended up breathing through our ears. A team studied live polypterid fish from Africa. These fish have a simple lung but no windpipe. The team found that 93% of the air getting into the lung came through holes in the tops of the head called spiracles. Being surrounded by bone, these structures are usually found in fossils of advanced fish and primitive walking vertebrates, the tetrapods. So now we can track how this early breathing mechanism developed. In more advanced tetrapods like us, the spiracles ended up becoming our ears. And now, 4 fast facts about walking on land. While the standard body plan for tetrapods includes 5 fingers and toes at the ends of each limb, some of the earliest landwalkers had 8 digits. In recent years, several fossil finds have completed the picture of every conceivable intermediate stage between advanced fish and the first land-walking vertebrates. The Queensland lungfish, while not an immediate ancestor to land-walking vertebrates, provides a clear picture of how air-breathing evolved in fish before they walked onto the land. And, in case you're wondering, Queensland lungfish are supposed to taste like a very oily salmon, and they're covered in a thick, sticky mucus. I know that because I had to throw my shirt away after handling one of them. That's it for this Week in Science. For more information on walking on land, go to the RiAus website, riaus.org.au, follow us on Twitter @RiAus, and like us on Facebook. I'm Paul Willis, and we'll catch you next week.
Podcast Science is an award-winning weekly science show in French hosted by a bunch of crazy enthusiasts. We are convinced that the greatest ideas in science are quite easy to grasp as long as they're presented with passion, using a vocabulary common to all curious minds, whatever their academic background, if any. You don't understand French yet? Well, it's never too late. All our stories have a written transcript on the website, and people from all around the world are using our content to learn Molière's language. Our topics range from 0 to infinity, from evolution to artificial life, from electromagnetism to the science of introverts. We just love mathematics, science, critical thinking. So do you? Want to join? You can subscribe to the podcast for free from our website, podcastscience.fm, that's in one word. You also find us on iTunes and SoundCloud. See you soon, hopefully. Hâte de vous accueillir. À bientôt sur Podcast Science.
What we want is some more evidence, please. Here's Jo Alabaster.
Hello, this is Jo Alabaster. In news from New Zealand, a Green Party MP has faced consequences after signing and sharing on social media a Change.org petition calling for the World Health Organization to test and distribute homeopathy to contain outbreaks of Ebola. The petition, started by Australia's own Fran Sheffield of Homeopathy Plus, winner of the Australian Skeptics 2012 Bent Spoon Award, addresses the World Health Organization and is titled, quote, "End the suffering of the Ebola crisis. Test and distribute homeopathy as quickly as possible to contain the outbreaks." End quote. It begins, quote, "Homeopathy has a proven track record of treating and preventing serious epidemic diseases. It's used by governments for dengue fever, leptospirosis, epidemic fever, malaria, and Japanese encephalitis epidemics, and, historically, for other serious contagious diseases. The appropriate homeopathic medicine, remedy, is likely to be just as effective against the Ebola virus." End quote. Well, yes, just as effective. As the NHMRC's review of homeopathy found earlier this year, homeopathy is not effective at all. Still, some continue to believe. Stephen Browning, New Zealand Green Party MP, signed the Change.org petition last month and shared it on his Facebook page, since deleted. His Green Party colleagues and other New Zealand parliamentarians were not impressed. In a public statement, Prime Minister John Key declared the idea of using homeopathy to treat Ebola virus as, quote, "barking mad," end quote. Quote, "Let's be honest. This is a serious global issue, and if he really thinks that's the answer, I'd love to see the medical research," end quote. Speaking to the media, Browning stated that, quote, "It was probably a pretty unwise thing. It was pretty late at night, and I signed it because I'm not opposed to homeopathy," end quote. He said that he did not intend to post it to Facebook and he wasn't about to promote it. Browning's Green Party colleagues, however, decided to condemn Browning's support of the petition, with Green Party co-leader Matira Ture announcing that the party supports, quote, "evidence-based health policy," end quote. Quote, "We wish to be very clear that we support the use of science and evidence when it comes to public health policy," end quote, said Ms. Ture. Quote, "Individuals can make choices about their own health treatments, but it is critical public health decisions are evidence-based and that consumers have appropriate evidence-based information about alternative health products," end quote. The Green Party caucus met and decided to remove the natural health products portfolio from Browning, merging it into the health portfolio. Browning said he can live with losing the portfolio. Quote, "I've got some other really gutsy portfolios and I'll be working very well on them," end quote, he said. Browning's other portfolios include agriculture, biosecurity and food safety. A quick scan of his Facebook page showed a post in which he encouraged people to attend the Food Matters conference and tour in Wellington, which features speakers such as Vandana Shiva and Gilly Eric Seralini, who are vehemently anti-genetic engineering. In fact, many posts on Browning's Facebook wall have a similar anti-GMO tone. Dr. Grant Jacobs on sciblogs.co.nz points out that Browning's support of homeopathy for Ebola, quote, "is not an idle blunder but an example of his thinking. This line of thinking does not suit any portfolio with substantial science content. Some would say any portfolio," end quote. While homeopathy for Ebola is an absurd notion to much of the general public, perhaps people are not so au fait with the science of genetic engineering. The media gave us a bit of a giggle at Browning's gaffe with homeopathy, which is a good thing. Much of our society now understands that homeopathy isn't something to be taken seriously. But would the media and public react the same way if a politician's support of Seralini, the chap with the flawed GM-fed rat studies, was publicised? As such, I'd like to stress the importance of evidence-based thinking and policy across the board. As for politicians who note that they're not scientists and aren't well informed on technical matters, get informed. You have access to the best and brightest experts on any given subject. Don't be duped by pseudoscience and woo.
Раз, два, три, четыре.
Друзья, меня зовут Кирилл Алферов, и я основатель общества скептиков. Мы зовем вас на наши встречи, которые проходят каждые 2 недели в Москве, и также приглашаем послушать наш подкаст, который выходит каждую неделю. Подкаст называется «Скептик», а сайт, на котором вы можете узнать о нашей деятельности, это www.skepticsociety.ru. Hey everybody, my name is Kirill, and I'm the founder of Skeptic Society Russia. Come visit us in Moscow in our bi-weekly meetings, and also listen to our weekly podcast, which is called Skeptic. And the site where you can find all of that is skepticsociety.ru.
The mail is still not good from Richard Saunders in his couch of arrogance. Unfortunately, he can't come off it. He's still not well. He can't be heard. He can't be heard except only by dogs. And that's not so good for a podcast, really. The paws just can't work the phone. It's the whole opposable thumb thing. See, I did read that book. But for now on, it's Maynard signing off from Maynard.com.au. Why not come there, have a listen to one of my podcasts? They aren't as good as this, but they do fill up about an hour. Bye.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.
Oh, and before you go, the 1980 Penthouse Pet of the Year won a Triumph TR7 or TR8, pretty much a TR7 with a V8 engine put in it from Rover. So it was kind of like from the Leyland factory. So I would suggest that the 1980 Penthouse Pet Australian Pet of the Year is still going, but the car, sadly, is not.